I focus on our partnership with Safe Software. They're based on the west coast of Canada in Vancouver. Safe make FME that no doubt many of you have heard of already, and our FME division is made up of a team of specialists, and we spend our time helping customers access and move their data. So that's going to be the focus of this session. Last week at the sister event to this one, we focused on applications. So I introduce you to the core capabilities of FME and the way that you can deploy it. And in particular, the way that through a managed cloud-based service, we can offer you with that support. So if you miss the event or you'd like to rewatch any of it, you can catch the recording on our website very soon. If you go to the URL at the bottom of this slide. This week, we're focusing on specifically on the data, getting access to it and putting it in the place that it's required. We're going to take you through a look at what data integration is about, how you author an FME workflow, and what kind of connectivity is possible. And I'm going to wrap up by showing you some of the advanced CAD and BIM support that FME offers and what that can potentially enable for you. For those of you who have this as your first introduction to FME, it's a Gartner Magic Quadrant recognized data integration platform. It's got unrivaled support for spatial data, and it's the glue between systems and environments that thrive on data. FME helps organizations in many industries to get access to disparate data sets often and move it to where it needs to be. And often it's about restructuring it along the way. FME sits between systems that can't sometimes natively talk to one another. And FME provides that translation capability, the filtering, the merging, the concatenation and generalization of data sets to meet the needs of end users and the systems into which it's being passed. And FME focuses on the raw data, ensuring it's wholly fit for purpose and can be made accessible to systems that need to use it. Last week, Clive Pulse, GIS lead on HS2, told us that if you focus on the data, it doesn't matter what the consuming application is. And that's especially important when you're working on projects with the kind of schedule that HS2 has, where systems may change over the duration of the project. Here you can see a simple FME workspace, and hopefully what you can get from this is that everything starts with FME Workbench, where you author a process, add the ability to consume data and output data at either end of the process, and those blue things on the canvas are transformers that allow you to manipulate the data, and then you can also, using a cache mode, visualize and inspect the data as you do things to it in a linear fashion through the data journey. Ultimately, though, you want to automate your process somehow, and this is the configuration of an automation whereby we're looking for the arrival of a file. It could be a JPEG, for example, in a folder, and we have FME watching that directory for a file being created somewhere on our network. A job is then run when it happens, so it's being used as a trigger, and then we send an email, and that job might be reading the JPEG, georeferencing it based on the EXIF header information that's stored as metadata inside the file. Just as far as connectivity is concerned, there is it is the sort of main event with FME, being able to get to two different data sets. And you can see here is a timeline of the data types that have been supported over the years. And if you want to go and find out whether FME supports the formats you care about, just go to safe.com/formats and have a look at that list. But you'll see there's support here for GIS and CAD workflows, moving data between spreadsheets and databases. XML and JSON is very prevalent these days because we're communicating so often with an API, an application programming interface, and the response back from those services is often a little bit of JSON or XML. I'll touch on 3D and BIM in a little while. Data might be on premise, you might have it in the cloud. It might be coming from a myriad of sensors in your network that are feeding information into your business. And you may ultimately want to present that data in some way. Now, whether that's in a gaming platform or whether it's in a business intelligence tool, it's quite often the case that that's an endpoint in a project. The only other thing I'm going to mention briefly is indoor mapping, because we're finding that certainly in the construction industry, moving the blue dot indoors is starting to be very important. So being able to process CAD data and floor plans to be able to enable that that indoor navigation is pretty important. When it comes to applications you're using in your ecosystem, though, FME can be used as an enabler to feed those applications with the detail that they need. Importantly, manipulating it to fit their sometimes complex schemas. The GIS and CAD challenge is one that many of you in the supply chain will be very familiar with already. Moving data between open source GIS tools like QGIS to proprietary systems like Esri, and bridging the divide from Esri to Autodesk is where FME first cut its teeth back in the mid-90s. But in recent years, we've gained connectivity to modern 3D systems like Revit and iModel, and have support for transfer standards like IFC. We can access data from surveying tools, GPS equipment, and manage reprojection challenges like moving data from national grids to more localized project grids, such as Snake Grid that we've just heard about from Jonathan. And having said all of that, the area that people don't always immediately appreciate is that with FME, you can also access data in your document management systems like SharePoint and ProjectWise, load content into facilities management tools, and connect that data with information in your CRM. Not very long ago, for example, we helped an engineering firm to pass timesheet and site material transaction data between two back office systems for a redevelopment project for a well-known train station upgrade in the UK. There weren't any geometric features processed in that project. It was all rows and packets of tabular data in XML. And this evolution can't afford to stop either. It seems every phone call we have with a customer and up pops a new format or a new so-called standard within which the organization's got some data or they want to load. We've had exactly that situation occur in the last couple of months around the emergence of a potential extension to the COBie standard in the form of GeoCOBie. Each year, SAFE have to add new formats to be able to ensure we can always reach our data. And on the slide are just a few formats that have been added or extended in FME this year. Snowflake, for example, is a SQL database designed and optimized with the cloud in mind. The Open Geospatial Commission's OGC GeoPackage format gets the ability to support the third dimension now. We've got the ability to read and write CityJSON, and Entwine is a really interesting point cloud format that stores point cloud data in a JSON structure, but it can also be a good way of introducing you to a nice browser-based visualization tool like Pottery, which if you go and have a look at entwine.io in a bit more detail after this event, you can go and have a play with that. And in FME, there are readers and writers that allow you to consume data before you ultimately write that data back out. But often you also need to change that data somehow, and that's where transformers come in. Now, with a transformer, you can manipulate your geometry or, say, concatenate two fields together, but you can also connect to data storage locations and APIs. These connector transformers are a common theme in FME these days and do what they say on the tin, because basically they help you connect to the service in question. Just touching on a couple of the ones here, the Google Cloud Storage Connector allows you to access the Google Cloud Storage file service. And much like Dropbox and OneDrive connectors, it allows you to upload, download, or delete files and folders. And or you could list information from your Google storage account. Picterra, that's a really interesting wrapper around the Picterra API, allowing detection of all kinds of objects on imagery. And those objects include buildings, cars, solar panels, trees, pavement cracks, and a few things besides. And this tweet from a chap called Dimitri put out a really interesting video clip of how he used it to automatically identify cracks on runways, which has obviously got a health and safety issue associated with it, and an operational issue as well. Google's Vision Connector, it's basically an AI or artificial intelligence transformer leveraging the power of the Google Vision algorithm. It includes the ability to do text detection, face and object identification, and if you couple that with Amazon's recognition service, then you can start doing raster image moderation for content as well. Now, we all love spreadsheets, perhaps not Public Health England at the moment, since they just managed to lose 16,000 reported cases of COVID-19 because they chose to use Excel's XLS format, their primary storage container for some patient information. And that format can't cope with more than 65,000 records. Effectively, it was being used in lieu of a production database. So I think if you want to go and read a topical story about why making the right decision about storing your data is vital, and how you store it, then the one that was published last night is one you should take a look at. That aside, though, we all use spreadsheets very frequently, and Excel is one of the most commonly processed formats through FME. Google Sheets, however, is also a very popular format with 2 billion active users of Google's G Suite, which includes Gmail, but also Google Docs and Sheets. I mean, it's a really popular format, so much so there was a 2-day conference just focusing on Sheets called SheetsCon at the start of the year. So if you didn't attend it, then you probably don't love spreadsheets quite enough. But the point I'm trying to make is that adding new formats is important, but keeping up with how formats change is also important. And this month, Google retired the old Sheets API, and with it, any application that hasn't moved quickly enough now doesn't have the ability to read and write its data into Google Sheets. Needless to say, I'd hardly bring it up if FME hadn't been updated last month to add this support in. So that's a positive step. Just touching on a few CAD and GIS scenarios, you can see here that there's all sorts of variations, merging, tiling, clipping, reprojecting. You'll get the slides after the event to be able to go and click into some of the use cases and scenarios here. The same is true for CAD and BIM. Moving data from floor plans and generating 3D models is possible too. We're now at a point where the need for BIM data is greater than ever before. So being able to have support native ability to read Revit files, read and write IFC files is very important. Here we can inspect an IFC file directly in the interface. Actually, this is a Revit model. You can go and view the 3D space. You can interrogate all of the attribution, the raw data stored in the model using that tool. And moving data into gaming engines, I touched on briefly. The reason I wanted to bring this up is that organizations like Highways England have worked with companies like Block Builders, who are a really interesting organization, who are engaging with communities. This is a road building project that was put into Minecraft to raise awareness of it. And you know, it allows engagement and the ability to visualize your data rather than just inspecting the content. So we can put this exact model that we've seen straight into a gaming platform and embed it with a number of other data sets. In this case, we've got an IFC building that we're dropping into a 3D model. This is a gaming platform. We've got a digital elevation model. We've got a sentinel image, all draped on top of each other. And you can now view and interrogate that data together and interact with it with a headset on, with multiple people if you wish, all from the original IFC. So I'll leave it there. That's my session. I just wanted to give you a flavor of some of the capabilities. And over to you again, Mark. Thank you.